Episode 1 2025 AD Earth. The spaceship from the future 12,025 AD Mars crash landed. The three musketeers of the space-time battleship gathered. September 15, 2025. That night, Monsakuwala Land, the rocket launch base of the Inion Space Development Group, along the seashore to the east, is an open space for tourists to visit rocket launches. A park extends from the green space to the beach by the sea. The story happened here. On the long wooden chair in the park, there are two young people, a man and a woman. The man is MUIE Guamwu, an astronaut here, and the Internal Affairs Secretary of an Enion Group President Chuichiro N. Enion. The woman is an Enion Samzu, a college classmate of MUIE Guamwu, a rocket engineer at the base, and the daughter of the president. The moon looks like a small boat, leisurely passing through the light sea of clouds. There is a meteor shower tonight, and the two people are watching the meteors that occasionally streak across the sky. Is that a meteor? It seems strange. Take a look. And Enion Samzu handed the telescope to MUIE Guamwu and pointed to the southwest direction in the sky with his right hand. In the telescope, MUIE Guamwu quickly locked onto the meteor that Enion Samzu pointed out to him. It looked a little strange, because most ordinary meteors drag or under flames, but this one seemed to be wrapped in a faint blue-green mysterious smoke. It was approaching the surface of the Earth and seemed to be getting bigger and bigger, but its speed was not like a meteor that instantly crossed the sky, and it was more like leaves falling from a tree. About 5 minutes later, the naked eye could see that it was not a meteor, but a spaceship, or, to be precise, it was a battleship, just like an early aircraft carrier, and the size was similar, but the bottom seemed to have gradually become the chassis of a tank. On both sides, there were huge tracks. It had no wings and no propellers like a helicopter. In the telescope, it was already possible to see a huge cannon on its deck. What shocked MUIE Guamwu and Enion Samzu even more was that it was flying straight towards them at a rapid speed. No, it felt to them that the huge steel monster was like a small mountain, smashing towards them. A sharp alarm sounded at the base, and the beams of searchlights crossed into the night sky, sweeping across the huge body of the spacecraft. Several fighter jets flew from afar and circled around the spacecraft. The base has sounded the emergency evacuation alarm. Let's go back in gather. And Enion Samzu said, it's too late. This is the largest evacuation site. They will come here in a while. MUIE Guamwu said while looking at the spacecraft. This time it's a big trouble. This ghost thing looks like it will land at this launch site. Hurry into the woods. Just as the two ran into the woods, the spacecraft, which was almost the size of an aircraft carrier, appeared in front of MUIE Guamwu and Enion Samzu. Just as the two scanned the spacecraft, trying to find its jet engine or other deceleration landing device but found nothing, and felt even more horrified and helpless. The spacecraft fell to the ground like a paper airplane and stopped on the grass outside the woods, no more than 100 meters away from them. Despite this, the airwaves raised by the spacecraft and the fighter jets and helicopters that followed, mixed with dust and flying grass and leaves, almost blew the two people down. The spacecraft was dark gray and metallic. From the side they saw, the trucks were 3 stories high, supporting the huge ship. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, it would be very appropriate to say that it was an amphibious warship. A fighter formation circled around the spacecraft at low altitude, and 2 armed helicopters also rushed over. Judging from their posture, they were ready to fire at the spacecraft at any time. Suddenly, accompanied by a high-frequency noise, a huge, translucent sphere appeared in front of the two people. It looked like a huge ice ball. The lower half was buried underground, and the spacecraft was frozen in the ice ball. The outer surface of the ice ball just looked like milky white water vapor evaporating, but the surface was still flashing with lavender discharge arcs. The two of them stood up from their chairs, subconsciously drew their swords, and looked at the spacecraft with anxiety and curiosity. MUIE Guamwu and Enion Samzu were horrified to see that an entrance appeared where the ice ball was facing them. It was a deep passage leading to the inside of the spacecraft. A helicopter stopped not far from them. 5 soldiers jumped out of the helicopter, holding guns and crouching, slowly approaching the entrance of the ice ball. Another helicopter hovered above, with machine guns facing the entrance of the spacecraft. On guard. Suddenly, MUIE Guamwu and Enion Samzu felt a white light in front of their eyes, and their bodies were dragged by an irresistible force. It felt like sliding on ice, and they passed through the passage in an instant and were pulled into the spacecraft. The soldiers reacted and rushed over quickly. But before they reached the entrance of the ice ball had disappeared. The passage was so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of you. MUI Iguamu stood there in horror. He could feel that Enenion Songzu was shaking as she held his hand tightly. "Follow me. It's okay," he said, and used the sword in his hand to explore and found the door. "This is the exit door," he said as he continued to explore. But the door had no handle and the surface was very smooth. He tried to push the door open and use his body to knock it open. But the door did not move at all. "We were kidnapped by aliens for no reason. This is ridiculous." And Enenion Songzu became excited. "Get out of the way. Let me do it." She stepped back a few steps, took a run, and kicked the door with a flying foot. But the door still did not move. "What do aliens want to do with us?" And Enenion Songzu asked anxiously. "1 as hostages. 2 as guinea pigs. Biological experiments. 3 others. I can't think of them. Anyway, this is what the book says. This is ridiculous." And Enenion Songzu swung the sword at the door. But the door was intact. "Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe the spacecraft encountered a disaster and had to ask us for help to treat the wounded or save their planet." Miki no Guamu comforted Enenion Songzu. They heard the soldiers outside shouting and hitting the ice ball hard. Then heard the sound of high voltage discharge like thunder, followed by screams. And then, no sound. The lights on the ceiling and walls were on. And they saw clearly that this was a silver white metal passage. There was a platform under their feet. And inside was an open horizontal sliding door. Inside the door were steps extending upward. "Go up the stairs to the deck," they called. Mechanically synthesized voice came to their ears. "This thing can speak our language. It should be from the civilized world. Don't be afraid. Follow me. And walk slowly." MUI Iguamu said to Enenion Songzu. He walked up the stairs slowly with the sword in his hand ready to attack at any time. At the end of the stairs, MUI Iguamu pulled out the hand that was held by Enenion Songzu and gestured to her to wait a moment. And then he jumped onto the deck. Seeing that there was no movement above, Enenion Songzu also jumped onto the deck. MUI Iguamu and Enenion Songzu stood back to cover each other, holding swords in their hands, ready to deal with sudden crises. The deck seemed empty. They were now in front of the deck. Not far away, there was a main gun with a caliber of 1 meter. The ice ball seen from the outside looked like a transparent glass cover from the inside. And the entire spacecraft was covered inside. Outside, armed helicopters were circling around the protective cover of the spacecraft. A helicopter hovered in the air and fired a string of machine gun shells at the direction of the door they had just entered. But the protective cover was unscathed and responded to the attack with a strong discharge. "I can't see a single creature. Not even on the deck," MUI Iguamu said. "Could it be that the alien creatures are transparent and we can't see them?" And Enenion Songzu asked nervously. "If that's the case, they should be observing us at close range. Just be careful. When moving, use the sword to explore the way." MUI Iguamu ordered. "Welcome to the Seashell spaceship. Come here." A mechanically synthesized, old-looking voice came from behind the main gun, looking in the direction of the voice. It looked like the control room of the spaceship. "What Seashell? The owner of the ship is not a 10,000-year-old water demon, right? Maybe he has changed into a mechanical body? So scary." And Enenion Songzu said, "Don't be afraid. It doesn't sound hostile. In case of an accident, the console should have buttons to remove the protective cover and open the door. As long as the door is opened, there will be soldiers in the armed helicopter outside to meet you." MUI Iguamu told Enenion Songzu. "Let's go now. I'll be in front. If there is a dangerous creature, I will chop it. You will cover me behind me." MUI Iguamu took slow and steady steps, observing and approaching the control console. Enenion Songzu followed closely behind, with the sword in her hand alerting the rear. She felt that the air was about to solidify. Suddenly, from the direction of the control console, from the swords in the hands of MUI Iguamu and Enenion Songzu, colorful lights were emitted at the same time. Almost instinctively, Enenion Songzu lowered his body and swept his left arm right back with his sword. Maki no Guamu leapt into the air and chopped down with the sword in his hand. Maki no Guamu's sword burst into a dazzling white light in front of their eyes. Outside the protective cover, the hovering armed helicopter broke into two halves from the middle and fell to the ground with the high-speed rotating propeller and the soldiers inside. Maki no Guamu and Enenion Songzu were stunned. "What's going on?" What did I do? Makino Gomamu said. Your sword. The original power awakened. And Eni Ansamzu said. Then, try your sword. It should be the same. Makino Gomu suggested. How to try? I cut down that helicopter too. And Eni Ansamzu said helplessly. What is that? And Eni Ansamzu pointed in the direction of the control console. Obviously because of shock, his mouth opened wide. Makino Gomu turned back and looked over, and was also stunned. From the direction of the control console, a girl slowly walked towards them. She is so beautiful. It turns out that there are really beautiful people like fairies. And Eni Ansamzu exclaimed. No, look at the sword in her hand. Makino Gomu reminded Eni Ansamzu. The girl was getting closer and closer. For some reason, Makino Gomu and Eni Ansamzu were no longer afraid. They saw clearly that the sword of the person was almost exactly the same as theirs. Welcome, both of you. Don't worry. You are distinguished guests of this ship and will not be harmed. Please go and have a cup of coffee together. The girl said. Who are you? How do you speak our language? How do you have the same sword as us? You must be frightened. It's a long story. Let's go over and talk slowly while drinking coffee. The girl suggested. Let's go. Makino Gomu pressed Eni Ansamzu's hand holding the sword and motioned her to follow. The girl led the way in front, and then Eni Ansamzu followed reluctantly at the back. Be careful. The spacecraft that can come to Earth must come from a planet with highly developed technology. There is no reason for the creatures there to look like humans on Earth. Maybe its original appearance is a fox. When it sees humans on Earth, it turns into a beautiful woman on Earth. Don't let it chop us into sashimi and eat us. And Eni Ansamzu whispered to Makino Gomu in the dialect of her hometown. The girl led them to the reception room. Hot coffee is ready for you, she said, and placed exquisite blue and white porcelain in front of the two people. Poured coffee, took out juice and a bottle of white wine from the refrigerator, filled everyone's cup, and took out fruit from the refrigerator and put it on a plate. Whatever you want. Just tell me. There are also foods. Thank you for your hospitality. Who are you? And Eni Ansamzu asked. I am not a fox. I also like sashimi. It is made of tuna. I will not chop you into sashimi. You can rest assured, she said with a smile. And Eni Ansamzu was so surprised that she opened her mouth wide and couldn't close it for a long time. You can understand dialect. Who are you? Why do you speak our language? Why do you have the same sword as us? Let's drink a glass of wine to calm down first, said Makino Gomu. I feel like I'm dreaming today. Then, he drank the wine in the glass. You are so bold. Dreaming. 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 And Eni Ansamzu said. It's our first meeting. I toast you a glass. The girl picked up her glass and drank it all. Seeing that Makino Gomu and the girl had both drunk the wine in their glasses, and Eni Ansamzu drank the wine in the glass in a huff. The wine was very sweet, and she felt much more relaxed. Would you like some sake? Asked the girl. Okay, then please, said Makino Gomu. And Eni Ansamzu looked at Makino Gomu with a strange look in his eyes. When we go back later, the government will ask you to pay for the helicopter. Drinking sake on a spaceship is something I dare not even dream of. Makino Gomu said to Eni Ansamzu. It's worth it even if I die. Look at your ability. And Eni Ansamzu replied. I don't know where the spaceship came from. Maybe there are unknown viruses or bacteria, and you will die. Maybe. But if that's the case, the moment we stepped into the spaceship, we were already infected. Now it doesn't look so pessimistic. Makino Gomu comforted Eni Ansamzu. What's your name? Excuse me. Can I see your sword? Makino Gomu asked the girl. My name is Bidou Jiguang. Of course. It's no problem to see the sword. The girl said. What are your names? My name is Makino Gomu. And this beautiful lady is Eni Ansamzu. Makino Gomu introduced. Eni Ansamzu. A very romantic name. Beautiful name. Beautiful person. The girl said. 3 swords were placed side on the table. All 3 swords were engraved with a 1-character name. Bidou Jiguang's was Ice. Hakino Mitsuru's was Sakura. And then Eni Ansamzu's was Hua. It shouldn't be. The decoration of the scabbard, the steel and pattern of the sword body, and the 7-star gem are all the same as ours. And Eni Ansamzu said. Yes. The great swordsmith only made 2. Makino Mitsuru said. It's 2025 AD here, right? I came from Mars in 12,025 AD. Bidou Jiguang said. This ship is a space-time spaceship. It was damaged on the battlefield. And then I don't know what happened. And it was swept here by a space-time vortex. This sword is an heirloom in my family. Iaidalu Jiguang pointed at his sword and said, Did I read a science fiction novel yesterday, and now I am trapped in a dream? And Enian Sangzu said to Mui Guangwu, Why don't you try to chop me with your sword and wake me up from the dream? I want to go back. Since we are here, we should make the best of it. Mui Guangwu comforted Enian Sangzu and said to Iaidalu Jiguang, Thank you very much for telling me the truth. You just said that you are a Martian. To be precise, I am a human on Earth like you. But my ancestors immigrated to Mars. You can think of us as Earthlings living on Mars. Iaidalu Jiguang explained. There used to be intelligent creatures on Mars, but they were different from the Earthlings. Their civilization had developed to a level that was higher than the current level of the Earth, and was called the first Martian civilization. The first Martian civilization lasted a long time before the birth of human civilization on Earth. But at the beginning of the birth of human civilization on Earth, the first Martian civilization had already ended. Later, Mars completely became a planet without life. In the 21st century, Earthlings began to migrate to Mars. These Martian immigrants, through the development of Mars, formed a civilization independent of the Earth. We call it the second Martian civilization, and I come from there. I see. Thank you very much for your introduction. Yui Guangwu said. Great. It turns out that they are the same people as us, not Martian monsters. The happiest person was Enian Sangzu. So, the great swordsmith actually made 3 swords instead of 2? Or did he forge another sword later? Enian Sangzu said to Mui Guangwu. You should have guessed it, but the truth can only be asked from the great swordsmith. Mui Guangwu also agreed with Enian Sangzu's analysis. That's right. Iaidalu Jiguang said, looking at Mui Guangwu's sword. What's right? What do you know? Asked Mui Guangwu. If you didn't have these 2 swords, I wouldn't have invited you as guests of the spaceship. Iaidalu Jiguang said, Bring your swords and follow me. Iaidalu Jiguang took the 2 to another large room in the spaceship. This is the most important place on this spaceship. The central command room. She introduced. Mui Guangwu and Enian Sangzu looked carefully at the control room. The round table in the center is a large control panel with colorful gems inlaid on the panel. Pull out the sword and put it here to try. Iaidalu Jiguang instructed them. Mui Guangwu was the first to put the sword on the control console. The gems inlaid on the sword radiated dazzling colorful light, and the gems on the control panel also emitted the same light. The entire sword body radiated a faint but extremely mysterious blue-purple halo. Your sword has passed the authentication, and the sword and the spaceship have established a synchronous connection. Enian Sangzu, who was impatient with curiosity, asked Makano Guangwu to take the sword away and put his own sword on it. Everyone saw the same phenomenon. If you don't understand anything, just ask. Iaidalu Jiguang said. What is this machine? Makino Guangwu asked. This is an artificial intelligence machine. It can autonomously control and manage this spaceship. You can imagine this controller as the heart of the spaceship. However, this is an awakened artificial intelligence that can make decisions independently. Iaidalu Jiguang explained. It is the owner of the spaceship. He calls himself the Homingtian. This is just a rough explanation. Iaidalu Jiguang added. To be more precise, it is the agent of the creator and obeys the will of its past master, the creator. However, this is very complicated and I am not very clear about it. Is the holographic projection in the center its past master, the creator? Asked Guangwu. That should be it. Strange. How come he always has his back to us from that direction? Enian Sangzu asked. Yes, we have never seen his face. Iaidalu Jiguang said. What is the synchronous connection between the sword and the spacecraft? Mui Guangwu asked. When the sword is connected to the spacecraft, simply put, the sword and the spacecraft are one, in a state of quantum entanglement, and the sword has the ability to manipulate space and time. Ask a question that is presumptuous and should not be asked. If it is inconvenient, you can choose not to answer. If I attack you, what will you use to defend yourself? I don't seem to see you have a gun, and I didn't see it on the spacecraft. Mui Guangwu asked. I would have told you this question even if you didn't ask, said Iaidalu Jiguang. When the spaceship is sailing in space, it is very dangerous to use hot weapons, such as guns and cannons, on the spaceship, because it is a vacuum outside. Seeing that the two people seemed to understand, Vidalu Yiguang continued to explain. It is forbidden to use hot weapons unnecessarily on the spaceship. In fact, the controller will release interference to prevent external hot weapons from working. I understand. Asked Ki Yomitsu Oyugi. You use a sword for self-defense? Absolutely correct. Vidalu Yiguang replied. So, doesn't it mean that if my swordsmanship is better than yours, I can steal this spaceship? And Enion Songzu asked curiously. There are two levels of sword use. At the first level, it is just an ordinary sword. And the lethality is your swordsmanship, so the sword must be practiced frequently. Vidalu Yiguang tried to search for the most easily understood vocabulary explanation. The second level is the synchronization of the sword in the spaceship. And your sword can use the original force. In order for the spaceship to provide you with more powerful capabilities, you need to provide the spaceship with corresponding raw materials. Vidalu Yiguang explained. What are the raw materials? And Enion Songzu was very curious. Each sword has different properties and different raw materials. Some are plants and some are minerals. In addition, people who use swords also need to practice before they can use the original force freely. There are also some other conditions, including the spacecraft has enough fuel, and some other things. Vidalu Yiguang added. It's just working for the spacecraft. I understand. And Enion Songzu continued to ask. Is this connection with the spacecraft only effective on the spacecraft? This connection. Its essence is the quantum entanglement effect, so it exceeds the speed of light and the distance of space. Vidalu Yiguang tried to explain in the most understandable language. The original force can only be used after being certified by the spacecraft controller, and it is under the monitoring of the spacecraft. If the spacecraft completely lacks this ability, your sword is just an ordinary sword. As for robbing the spacecraft, the operation and control of the spacecraft requires you to obtain certification, and the specific operation and control also need to be recognized by the spacecraft. How can it be certified by the spacecraft? And Enion Songzu asked. On the ship now, there are only these three swords and the owners of the sword. The three of us. Vidalu Yiguang said. There are also people who have been certified, but they are not here now. This spaceship sounds very powerful. Does this spaceship have any enemies in the universe? And Enion Songzu asked. There are many dangers in the universe, and the same is true for spaceships. You will understand later. Vidalu Yiguang replied. What are you going to do with us? Will you let us go back, or will you hold us hostage? And Enion Songzu asked. I just invited you to be my guest. You can leave at any time. Vidalu Yiguang replied. However, I need to convey to Huang Qian's words to you. It is it that allows you to board the ship. It's said that you can stay on the ship and you have a mission. I seem to understand that this old thing wants us to work for it. And Enion Songzu asked. If we refuse to work for it, will it force us? If you are asking whether it will tuck you into sashimi, I don't know. No one can make a decision for it, including me. Vidalu Yiguang replied. Judging from her expression, it seems that she is not joking. And Enion Songzu regained the feeling of horror. I said you were transformed from a fox. Isn't that different? Seeing that Vidalu Yiguang's expression did not react, she continued. Open the hatch. I'm leaving. She glanced at Mui Guangwu. The monsters in Journey to the West all eat Tang Seng's meat, not girls. By the way, he is much more delicious than Tang Seng. So let me go, and leave him free slowly. Mui Guangwu looked at an Enion Songzu. His face turned green. Let you go. No problem. Vidalu Yiguang said. But there is a condition. Since you and him can't be lovers, such a rare Tang Seng meat, eat it with me. I will let you go immediately. Vidalu Yiguang still had a serious expression. Vidalu Yiguang, don't say anything nonsense. I'm not her lover. We are just classmates in college. Mui Guangwu looked at Vidalu Yiguang and said seriously. Okay, I was just joking and wanted to scare you. Sorry. Looking at the desperate Enion Songzu, Vidalu Yiguang said frankly. I guarantee you that you can come and go freely. Will it give you this favor? And Enion Songzu asked. If it gets angry, will it kill you too? Then no one will play with it. Vidalu Yiguang said confidently. Let this big steel guy float in the universe by himself. The Huang Qian can accept you, but it will not embarrass you against your will. This is stipulated by the law of robotics. You can rest assured. Vidalu Yiguang said. Let's talk about business. Why did the spacecraft fall? In the current state, can we go back? MUI Guamu asked. Because we just experienced a space war. A fierce battle. The Ideology Guam said. The spacecraft has some damage, although not serious. But it will take a few days to prepare and repair, and refuel before the spacecraft can sail. There is another problem. The old captain, that is, my father, has died, she said. Even the old captain cannot use time to sail freely. I don't know what happened this time, and I was swept here by the vortex of time and space. So, I don't know how to get back to Mars in 12,025 AD. Since it is a space-time spaceship, we will find a way to go back slowly. Don't worry. Mikino Guam was said to be Ideology Guam. I'm so sorry. You must be very tired. Why didn't we think of this? I am really tired and sleepy. It should be because I consumed too much physical strength in the war just now. I feel so sleepy that I can't hold on. The Ideology Guam said. Help the Ideology Guam lie on the big sofa to rest first. And everyone will discuss while she rests. Mokuno Guam was set to end any Somzu. Right now, the Ideology Guam needs medical support. MUI Guam will analyze. But now the outside world should be full of anxiety and fear about the spacecraft. And there is also a lot of hostility. We must communicate and negotiate as soon as possible. But if we open the hatch now, they will rush in. And the situation will not be under our control. And Annie Ansomzu said, yes, before reaching a consensus in the negotiations, no one can be allowed in. MUI Guamu said, but don't worry. Our swords have the original power. By the way, what is that protective cover outside the spacecraft? MUI Guamu asked. Datni, originally, was a sub-universe formed by antimatter energy, allowing the spacecraft to travel freely in time and space. Now, it has finally restarted successfully. But because of the damage to the spacecraft, the output has been greatly reduced. However, there is no problem in resisting conventional firepower attacks. The Ideology Guam said, we are safe here. I understand, said MUI Guamu. But it is not a solution to keep doing this. After opening the door, I will be responsible for guarding the hatch, said MUI Guamu. And Inion Somsu, you are responsible for communication. The first thing is to ask the medical staff to come over. The Ideology Guam. Wait for Inion Somsu to go out. You immediately close the entrance and exit of the small universe, just in case. This matter should be known to many countries in the world, and various forces should have been dispatched. It will be very tricky, said Enion Somzu. Yes, we should communicate with your father first and ask him to participate in the mediation. In this way, at least there will be no problems in intelligence and communication, and things will be much easier, said MUI Guamwu. No problem. The medical team should also ask my father's exclusive team to bring equipment to avoid accidents. And Enion Somzu suggested. The Idalu Ors. Do you think this is okay? MUI Guamwu asked. No problem. Just do as you said. The Ideology Guam said. I will turn on the main gun and put it on standby. No matter which of you encounters a crisis, the main gun can use firepower support that is 10,000 times stronger than the original power of the sword, and can also rescue you. Great. Then let's do it. Makino Guam will ask the Ideology Guam. Can we communicate with the outside world here? No problem. You should be able to talk to the president of a certain country. The Ideology Guam replied. In fact, the Huangtian has long been connected to the internet, in front of its quantum computing power. Your internet, even the bank's computer, is equivalent to having no password. There is something like a telephone handset on the control console. Use voice to tell it where you want to connect, and it will help you try. Of course, you can also directly dial the phone number, or send text messages and emails. Great. The Ideology Guami. Take a quiet rest first. We will take the steps. The first step is to let the medical team in first. This is also necessary for both parties to establish initial mutual trust. Mikino Guamu suggested. MUI Guamu continued. The second step is to negotiate with the government and the military. During the time the spacecraft stays on Earth, the government will help the spacecraft prepare and resupply. And the spacecraft will also provide some help to the government in researching future technologies. For example, allowing scientists to visit the ship. As for the specific details, the Ideology Guam can slowly consider them while he is recovering. Viidalu Jiguang. Do you think this is okay? Ui Iguamu asked. Thank you very much for your willingness to help me. I think we should just follow MUI Iguamu's proposal. And Annie Ansongzu. What do you think? Viidalu Jiguang said. I also agree with this proposal. As long as I can do it, I will do it with you. And Annie Ansongzu said. Great. Then, let's take the first step. During this time, we still need to communicate some things, such as the current defense and other capabilities of the spacecraft, and unexpected countermeasures. Mikino Mitsoyugi then turned to Annie Ansongzu. And Annie Ansongzu, let's communicate with your father first. Then, do you want to go back once? I think it's better for me to go back and communicate. It's not easy to communicate clearly over the phone. And Annie Ansongzu said, this is the base of our company. Let my father's security team meet me at the hatch. The military should not dare to kidnap me. In case of any accidents, the spacecraft can sense your sword through your sword. You can stay calm and don't need to use the original force to try to escape. We will go to rescue. Viidalu Jiguang said. Although it is a short time, you two are members of the spaceship, and the power of the spaceship is with you. If you don't mind, I want to announce that the spaceship team is formed. I am very happy to be a member of the spaceship team. Makino Guangwu said it. And Annie Ansongzu. You too. Right? Go get some wine. Let's have a toast and celebrate. Of course. A spaceship team formed across time and space must be celebrated even if it only exists for one day. And Annie Ansongzu responded. Everyone, please come to the control console. Viidalu, Ora said, standing up and leading two people to the control console. Please join me and show your swords. She held a sword in her right hand and a bowl of wine in her left hand, saying, the 79th generation crew of the HA-IBI Spacetime spaceship and the HA-IBI Spacetime battleship is hereby established. She said, please ask Da Huangtian to unlock the original power of the team member level for each team member and his sword, and unlock the corresponding control authority of this ship. The gems inlaid on the control console suddenly emitted a brilliant light, like a sky full of stars. In the background, Izukukik full of mystery. The voice of Da Huangtian machinery came. The 79th captain of the HA-IBI Spacetime battleship, Viidalu Jiguang, the commander of the combat unit, MUI Iguamu, and the chief of the ship, and Annie Ansongzu, have been appointed. The original power has been unlocked, and the authority to control this ship has been unlocked. Please improve your swordsmanship from now on and fulfill the mission of this ship. The three people put their swords back into the scabbards and slowly tasted the wine in the cups. For the first time, the spaceship was filled with a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. I'll go my father now. And Annie Ansongzu put down the empty wine glass and said, to the two people, we are just talking here. Said MUI Guangwu. I should have called the president to report my safety. He must be very worried. Say hello to the president for me.